From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, well, one of the two professors here today, Luigi Rosa Bianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, isn't it wonderful how the universe works? Just a couple of days ago, you and I were talking, and we said, I wish we could find a guest for the podcast who's really fluent in business acquisitions. And there you go. The universe spins it right to us. And we get Jeff Villwock, the acquisitions professor. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. And we are dying to hear some of these acquisition war stories because you've really got an impressive resume.
Thanks, Lou. Glad to be here.
So where do we begin? You really sharpened your teeth on some wonderful hospital acquisitions and hospital groups. Do you have any fun war stories for us to learn from?
Oh my gosh. I started my career back in the late 70s. So I've been doing this a while. And the first 25 years really was on the investment research side. And you realized back then, a research analyst is also a banker. They didn't have that title. But this whole thing about the Chinese wall, they left that in China. I mean, it didn't exist. So, got a lot of, great experience early on, and then went over to, full-time investment banking back around 1999 or 2000. And so been involved in all sorts of stuff. I remember, going back to a period that hopefully doesn't happen again, 2008 and 9. We had two deals ready to close. One was a $400 and some odd million deal, and the other was a couple $100 million deal. And just like that, done. Not going to happen. We had term sheets. I remember one of the deals. We had term sheets from a number of the big lenders, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, all those guys. And the buyer was trying to, eke out, I want another 1/8 of a point less on my rate to get the deal done, and didn't sign the term sheet on Monday. And by Wednesday, it was too late. Nobody was going to sign the term sheet. And in reality, if he had signed it, the bank would have said, that's nice, but, we're not closing anyway. So,
well, Jeff, what impresses me so much about your resume is that not only were you able to make these successful acquisitions and consult on them, but you also operating in an industry with such high regulatory thresholds. And how on earth did you get these deals across the finish line?
Yeah, it's simple. Most of the time, it's simply a matter of diligence. I mean, we completed both of those deals that fell apart in 2008. We completed both of them in 2010. I mean, so this business requires tenacity. I mean, a tremendous amount of tenacity. One of the funnest things I ever did, I'm sure you've heard of Tenet Healthcare.
Yes.
Second largest hospital company in America. I ran the proxy fight against one of their former CEO, years and years ago. And that was a hoot. That was great. This is the most underperforming hospital company in America. And, at the same time, they were about to get dinged for, just under $1 billion in Medicare fraud fines. And so we had some fun with that one. But, again, that's a long time ago.
Hey, Jeff, while we have you here, Jeff, give us an idea. The typical hospital, just as a rule of thumb, the typical hospital, what percentage of their revenue is Medicare, Medicaid, and self-pay?
Oh, it hugely varies depending on where you are. If you're sitting in downtown Atlanta, it's probably going to be 90%.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
If you're sitting in rural Georgia, it's probably 40%.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So it makes a huge difference.
So Jeff, you know what I love about your story though, man, is not only did you do it and you were working with the big banks, and you're not just some fly by night guru that's teaching people out there to go buy businesses. I mean, you were an analyst, an all-star analyst named by the Wall Street Journal. You're really focused in healthcare, but I guess you got tired of doing it for other people and you decided to go do it yourself, and you bought a business that was doing $30 million in revenue. And you didn't come out of your pocket any money. Let's hear this story because I know everybody else wants to.
Yeah, no, this is fun. Yeah, we bought a company with over $30 million in revenue and did not need to write a check. In fact, the business wrote us a check at closing.
Okay.
So, yeah, individuals going out and buying companies, that's what I do these days. But yeah, I mean, I got a call in November 2019. From a former investment banking client. And he said, Jeff, I found this deal. I think I want to buy it. And I have absolutely no idea how to do that. Can you help me? And I said, sure, send me the stuff. So he sent it to me, and I looked at this thing and frankly really couldn't believe what I was looking at, because I knew exactly how to buy this business. And so I called him back and said, Kevin, A, I know exactly how to do this deal. B, you've got a new business partner. And C, I want to be CEO. I want to run this thing. He said, okay. Now, that was in November of 2019, and we all know what happened in March of 2020. This little thing called COVID. So we're going towards our closing in March. I've got all the financing all arranged, legal documents done. I'm 7 days away from closing, and I get this phone call from the lender that basically says our credit committee is not going to allow us to go forward. I said, what the heck? Your credit committee's already approved this deal. What do you mean they're not going to go forward? And, and they give me a song and dance about why not. All right. Not a good thing. So we went back to the seller, told him what happened. And I said, look, I've got 5 other term sheets from lenders that wanted to do this deal. I just chose the wrong one. Let me rekindle those conversations. So I did. Called a guy that I'd done other deals with. And besides him giving me a bunch of gruff because I didn't choose him the first time, he said, sure, I'd love to do that deal. So we put it all back together again. This time we've already signed the documents. We've already integrated our systems into the lender systems, and I get this phone call. Well, our warehouse line is now requiring credit insurance on all accounts receivable that they lend against. And this was in late April. Credit insurance. Well, we sold to college bookstores. You know what the college bookstores were doing in April of 2020?
Absolutely nothing.
They had shut down all the campuses all over the country. So my entire client base was out of business. Now, maybe that should have told me I shouldn't have bought the deal. But anyway, so they backed out. And the only thing I didn't do is sue their ass. I mean, we literally had already signed documents. It was a done deal. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out, okay, now what? As I tell my kids, when you get into something that's really bad, take a deep breath and now say, what's next? What's next? Got to go forward. So we found a family office, and they didn't care about COVID. They didn't care about any of it. There is their own money. No, B of A or Wells Fargo wasn't going to tell them what they could or couldn't do. They took a pound of flesh, but they got the deal done.
That's a big thing. Let's talk about that for a second, right? So everybody thinks that the most money, right, or the least amount of interest is always the right deal, when it's generally not. It's who's going to get the deal done, right? And if you have to pay a little bit more, go a little bit against what you really wanted to pay in the beginning, it's who's going to get the deal done. Because some people all fizzle.
That's exactly right. And you know, financing an acquisition when you don't own anything, I mean, you're going into a platform, you're going into a deal. That's difficult. It's far easier to refinance the deal the day after you buy it.
Hmm.
And there's something in a lender's mind. I don't quite understand it, but if you're already in the business, even if you've only been into it for a short period of time, I mean that bridge company, we took them out in about 45 days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the SBA, right? If you can get into the company and then wait 6 months for the change of ownership, then you can do an SBA buyout right away because you're already in the company and they know you're been in there, right? Rather than day one having to come out with all these down payments too. So,
Exactly right. And look, SBA debt is fantastic debt. I've used that with clients previously. You know, we just completed a deal month and a half, 2 months ago,
mhm.
where we actually used commercial bank, and it was simply a normal bank loan. But you know, the individual was able to get that because he had a significant amount of net worth, and
Yeah.
you know was already banking at that bank, and so they got that done. But outside of that, SBA would have been a terrific alternative.
Yeah, traditional banks are hard to deal with, right? They usually just want to do SBA 95% of the time because they're not going to lose much money if the deal goes south, right? That's the way they
That's
see
right.
it.
That's right. They get their
Especially
fees, and
especially
everybody happy.
in the lower markets, right? Um so all right, so we're here now. So it's COVID. Every bookstore is down. You get the deal done through a family office. What was your first move after that?
Well, the first thing we did, I started going. This business happens to be in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and I was living in Atlanta at the time. And so I would spend 3 weeks a month in King of Prussia, realizing flying on Delta, middle seats, nobody's in the middle seats, right? In
Mhm.
some cases, virtually nobody's in the plane. And we're wearing the masks and doing all the crazy stuff that we had to do. But I spent 3 weeks a month up there. The hotel that I stayed at probably had 20% or less occupancy for much of the first year I was there. And so I did that for a year and a half. And in that period of time, I wanted to accomplish two things. One is I wanted to know my people, and I wanted to know what they were really capable of. This company had been on an autopilot for about 10 years. A four-man, senior leadership team. I told everybody I wasn't going to make a change in the first 90 days. And on day 91, fired 2 out of the 4.
Wow.
Uh, the third guy left 6 months later. I showed him the door, and we were left with the fourth, who actually was very good. So I wanted to know my people. Secondly, I wanted to know the systems that we had and start really diving into the details of the business. I wanted to learn it from the ground up. So I started in the warehouse. We had a 30,000 square foot warehouse, and I tore that warehouse apart, financially as well as operationally. I mean, I could tell you precisely what it cost us to ship a book, to receive a book in, to do any of the functions, because in this business, returns are a big problem. All right, college bookstores going back to the 1930s depression were given books pretty much on consignment, and if they didn't sell it, they could return it, 100% credit, no questions asked. And that, even today, almost 100 years later, 90 years later, it's still the way that business works. So you've got to watch your shipping costs very, very carefully, because you're going to get 30% of what you ship out back in. So to answer your question, I mean, I needed to learn this business, from the ground floor, and that's what I did. I spent 18 months jetting back and forth. I think I had 160, 170 airplane flights, something crazy, all during COVID.
So so you went in, you learned the business, you jumped right into the fire, right? Where were you able to bring your expertise in what area that actually shifted this business forward?
Well, there's a couple things. As we went into the, really the details, of this business, we were able to bring in, for instance, FedEx and UPS. Guys, I'm spending $1.1 million a year. I want to spend, less than that for the same volume. I want you to come in here. I want you to do your engineering study. Come into to the warehouse for a week. Watch my people. See what they do. See how long it takes them to do it. Bring me back an engineering study, along with a proposal as to how you'd like to do business with us going forward. Meaningful difference to our cost structure.
Now, did the previous owner never try to renegotiate any of those contracts with any of the vendors?
I mean, they renegotiated a contract here and there, but I don't think they ever competed FedEx that really, really wanted the business with UPS that had traditionally had it.
Okay.
So, and these guys have a lot of leeway as to how they do business with you. I mean, UPS helped us buy some capital equipment, and they wrote the checks.
Oh, wow.
We didn't write the check.
So, okay, let's go into that for a second, because I don't want to just fly by that one. That's an interesting thing. So how do you go in, you get a vendor to give you a loan to go buy some capital equipment? That's all. What was it?
A loan. No,
okay.
It was, I'm going to give you, I forget what the dollar number was, like a $50,000 allowance. Okay. Here are all the vendors we work with. Basically, go to Amazon. I mean, we weren't going to Amazon, but, go to our vendors, see what you need, price it out. You tell us what you need. We'll buy it, ship it to you. No money out of our pocket. None.
I love it.
We did a lighting project. We put LED lights throughout the entire warehouse. Okay, not a penny out of pocket. Not a penny. When we had bought the warehouse at one point, and 4 months later, we'd given it what we thought, and even to this day, I'll tell you, it was a stupid offer to buy the warehouse back from us. And by the way, we use SBA financing to buy the warehouse after the deal was closed. So we sell this warehouse to a REIT, and as part of the deal, I wanted an allowance to redo the lighting. We had all these old, 12-foot fluorescent tubes, or 10-foot, whatever they are. Not good. And they gave me an allowance. Then we turned around to the power company that had a program. And again, they're not doing this especially for us. They had a program where if a business put in LED lights, which are very energy efficient, they would help pay for the cost of the installation. Between those two buckets, 100% of that cost was paid. And the lighting in there, I mean, just it's night and day. I mean, my God, incredible change. So again, it's a lot of blocking and tackling for the most part, in any business, to make sure that you're getting what you need to get. We had one of our largest customers. I went to him because their returns were so high, and I said, I need some help here. And I know I can't change my pricing because of rules that I have to change pricing for everybody. But why don't you pick up the freight bill when I send it to your schools? And they managed 1,100, 1,200 bookstores around the country. By far our largest customer. They said, okay. Saved us $350,000 a year. Just with that one change. And I'm sure their UPS contract's a heck of a lot better than our UPS contract. I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar business. We're a $30 million business. But saved us a tremendous amount. Yeah, we looked at credit card charges. We were paying a ton of money on credit card processing. Why don't we pass that on? So we figured out how to do that. We did it. So, and all the time, because we're in the textbook business, I mean, we're in headwinds. I mean, this is a business that's getting harder and harder and harder year after year. So, we needed these things to get back, and then we got back more than 100% of the headwinds to be able to move the business forward.
And Jeff, where's the business today? When I look at a textbook or print shop business, I imagine a lot of that is converting to digital. What's the status
It is,
of
and
the
that's
industry
the
today?
biggest. Yeah, that's the biggest headwind by far. There's a huge shift to digital. So we have a digital business as well as the print business. And so what we decided is that the print business was getting so difficult that we decided the best thing we could do would be sell the digital business to a group that knows what they're doing in the digital business. I mean, running a digital business is so much different than running, a print business. Completely different skill set. And I don't have that skill set. So we decided we're going to sell the print business, and that's going to close. I was just told yesterday on the 16th of September, and we're actually going to liquidate the print part. I mean, that's the best outcome. It's not a great outcome, but it's the best outcome, I think, that we could have. So that's what we're doing, and so now I've started my fourth career, career number 4.
So what is that? Where are we going next, Jeff? What are you looking to do?
Well, I love doing deals. I love the M&A process, right? And so I'm going to help people that just have a burning passion to own their own business. I'm going to help them do that. And so I've branded it the acquisitions professor. Yeah, got Lou the professor there. So I'm the acquisitions professor. And in fact, we just completed our first deal. So I'm working with individuals primarily, and I'm talking with some companies too that want to grow by acquisition. But the primary focus is on individuals that just have to own a business, and they're willing to put up with the roadblocks that in any deal you're going to encounter. It's a little bit like my how to get it financed 3 times story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully it's not that bad, but I mean, you encounter things as you go through the process of buying a company, and you don't give up.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all starts out with mindset, right? I would believe. And what we talk to people is, why do you want to buy the business? What are you looking for? Right. It seems very simple, right? But why are we buying this? Right. Are we trying to replace the income that I'm having from my W-2 job? If so, how much is that? Now let's reverse engineer what we have to buy. What I tend to see a lot of the time is people come in, I want to buy this business for 100,000, for 500,000. When I look at that, a business that's doing 500,000 is not really a business. It's usually somebody that just has a nice job that's self-employed at that point in time, right? So my big thing is, let's look at companies that are doing 3 million plus in revenue. This way we can, if you want to stay on and run the company, great. But if you don't want to run the company, there's money in there that we could actually hire a professional manager or an outside CEO to run the business for you.
Or there's already somebody in the business that can fulfill that role.
Absolutely.
I mean, the deal that we just completed, one of the kind of the metrics that I was given to work with, the guy said, "I'm not looking for a job. I want an existing management team to run this business." He said, "Now I'll be part of the strategy group. I'm going to come in, 2-3 days a week, at least initially, learn as much as I can about the business and help it any way I can. But I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking for the 60-hour week in one business for a paycheck."
Yeah.
So you're right. The why is incredibly important. And in fact, I'm halfway through a kind of a LinkedIn series I'm doing, and step number 1, why? It is vitally important to understand that. And when I get on the phone with somebody, if they think they want to hire me, That's what I'm drilling into. I'm drilling into, is this the kind of person that the first time they hit a speed bump is going to say, I'm out of here. You didn't do your job right. I didn't get to buy a company. Or is it somebody that is, absolutely dedicated to, we're going to get this deal done regardless of what happens. I've got to own a company.
Yeah, and
It makes a huge difference.
I think most people got to realize it's like buying a house. You're not going to see that one. You have to start looking at them. And listen, if you want the best deal, you better have multiple offers going on multiple things and have 3 different backup plans at the time, right? Because
I love it. That's exactly right.
Fall through. We all know that, right?
That's exactly right. With the one boat dealership I was telling you about earlier, that we bought, we looked at at least a dozen companies.
Yeah.
And particularly in these smaller deals where you're talking about a couple $1 million in revenue.
Yeah.
Or this one happened to be more like $6 million in revenue. But in those deals, sometimes the accounting isn't really good.
Yes, 100%.
The broker that tells you, oh yeah, this thing's got an SDE, seller discretionary earnings.
Yeah.
Which is a made-up number, $500,000. I said, great, show me your bank statements. 3 years. Take your beginning balance, your ending balance. What happened to the cash? Okay, how much in distributions did you take? Oh, I had one. This is priceless. How many distributions did you take in the last 3 years, seller? None. Okay. All right, and your add backs were about $200,000 a year. So you're taking about $200,000 a year out of the business. Is that about right? Yeah. But you've averaged earnings of $500,000 a year for the last 3 years, right? Yeah. So you should have an extra $900,000 in cash. Let me see your balance. Bank balance was down. Oops. What happened to the $900,000 in cash over the last 3 years? Well, maybe I wasn't earning $500,000 a year. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, so that's the problem, right? Especially when you're dealing with a lot of business brokers. I think a lot of them are just telling them what they can sell the company for, so they can lock up the listing on it and have a Hail Mary in case if it gets sold. But the truth of the matter is, most businesses out there, the baby boomers, everybody's that's selling these businesses, are going to trade on SDE, right? Where I have issues with this is the multiple that they put on these businesses, right? Because there's going to be a range in that multiple, right? It's not, and everybody has these country club multiples. Well, I was just 3 of my buddies just sold their business, and they always give you the highest one, and that's what they think it's worth. But when you actually look under the hood,
we're selling it for 8 times, 10 times, 12 times EBITDA. Yeah, huh? It's pretty hard.
Then you got to explain no, and then but it's the revenue. No, it's SDE. But I really have an issue with some people coming in there telling them their business is worth X, going in trying to buy the business. You got to tell somebody that especially if they're in the trade businesses, they killed their body for 30 years, right? Their blood, sweat, and tears, hard times went through their business to actually sit back and say, look, I don't know who told you your business is worth it, but it's actually really not worth anything, right? So I think the education purpose should not only for people that want to buy businesses, but people that are looking to sell their businesses too, especially if they're looking to exit in the next 24 to 36 months. They got to start getting their financials in order. I mean, think about it when you were in the banking deals, right? Those due diligence processes were a nightmare, right? And everybody wants to sell. Everybody thinks they're going to sell these private equity gods that are coming around. And let me tell you something. If your T's aren't crossed and your I's aren't dotted on your financials, private equity is not going to touch you. Right?
Not going to touch you. And the difference, I mean, you mentioned brokers. And most brokers are just taking whatever the client gives them and throwing it up against the wall.
Yep.
And they hope it sticks. I mean, when we did sell-side assignments in an investment bank, I mean, we tore that business apart, put it back together again. We wrote the sim, right? It was our models. I mean, we knew that business as well as people internally knew that business before the teaser went out to the first potential
Absolutely.
buyers. And none of that happens with a broker. So most of the deals that you're going to look at, if you're looking for from a business broker, I mean, they're pretty much dead on arrival. They're not, and, to your point, I mean, many of them aren't worth anything.
Well, I mean, the statistic is only 20% of all businesses that are listed actually sell.
Is that right? I didn't
Yep.
know that. That
Mhm.
makes sense.
20% of
Yeah.
all businesses actually sell that are listed on the market, which
Right.
is
And if you didn't do your diligence right,
Mhm.
you got a 90% chance of that deal not working out very well for you.
Yeah, but you know what also happens though too is the minute a business owner lists their business for sale, what happens? They start dreaming. They're exiting the business. They're gone. The business starts to go downhill, and if they don't get their shit in order sooner than later, the business is going to fall apart, and it's not going to be worth anything at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, a really good advisory business, and I'm not in that business, but maybe I should be, is to work with those guys that are within 24 months of the sale. And yeah, one company I worked with back in whenever it was, I sold it in 2015. So I guess I started working with them about 2012. They wanted to sell the business. They actually had a buyer, hired me to just walk through, run that process for them. And at the end of, we're getting down towards the end of the process, and I turned to the CEO and I said, "You don't want to sell this business to this guy." And I explained to him exactly why he didn't want to sell the business. Realize I'm fully paid on success basis, right? So, but you don't want to sell this business. And finally convinced him that his life would be absolutely miserable because he was going to have to work for this guy. And it was not going to be pretty. So the next thing I talked to him about, I said, "You know what? I now know enough about your business to be dangerous, but I think we can double or triple your business in 2 years, maybe 3, and then sell it." And so at first he thought I was smoking dope. But after we talked more and I started putting some numbers in front of him and, explaining how we would do that, because he said, "Look, Jeff, I'm a one-arm paper hanger. I can't do anything more than I'm doing today." And I said, "I don't want you to do any more than you're doing today. Your limiting factor is not your time. The limiting factor is capital. And I can bring in the capital to buy," this happened to be a fixed wing air ambulance company, to buy more jets. And with more jets, you have more patients. With more patients, you have more revenue and you have more earnings. And you got enough free cash flow that I can buy a new jet every 3 months. And you're financing it all by yourself. So he finally said yes. So 2 years later, we sold the business. Instead of doing $10 million a year, is doing more like $22 million in a run rate. And he got a purchase price at least 3x. I forget what the number was, but dramatically larger.
Yeah.
Than he originally had. And basically had the same amount of debt at the end that he had at the beginning. So the amount of money in his pocket was like 10x.
Exactly.
After tax.
I love that.
So, but to your point, getting the business ready for sale. And if you can hit the afterburners rather than going on vacation as the business is selling, if you can hit the afterburners and get that last piece of growth, make a huge difference to the seller.
100%. Jeff, what are you seeing in the market right now? Where are you seeing most people put their time and effort into buying? Because we had a private equity guy on here not too long ago, and he was telling us the trades, right? Trade businesses are where they're really looking into these days, right? And they're going lower market too, because there's just how many companies can you buy with 25 million in EBITDA, right? So they're going downstream.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that you're seeing more of the family offices and lower end private equity, start to come downstream a little bit. The multiples have gotten a little frothy. in the marketplace, and and I think they're doing a better job finding the smaller deals. But most of the people that I'm talking with, they don't necessarily have a specific business or even a specific industry in mind.
Okay.
I mean, they know it needs to, I'm working with one guy right now who's got a great engineering background, systems, process. He's a pro. And so he'd love to find a logistics or a manufacturing company where he can bring his expertise and grow it. Right? Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Or if you had somebody who's a social media expert, what kind of business would you want to buy? Well, you'd want to buy a business that is not utilizing their social marketing or paid advertising, whatever it is, as effectively as they could. So that type of buyer potentially could double or triple a business fairly quickly.
Yep.
So it all goes back to the why that you mentioned early on. If you can get the person to understand why they want to buy a business, what do they bring to the table, then you can start, talking about, this sector might look good or that sector might look good. And the other thing I heartily endorse, my clients do early on is to get online. I want to buy a business in Tampa, Florida. Boom, you'll have a gazillion. And just start flipping through them. Not necessarily saying, hey, I want to buy that one or this one, but get some ideas of what's possibly out there. And, and I find that helps people kind of solidify, what they want. And every once in a while, they come back and say, hey, I just found this business that did this. I had a guy 2 weeks ago, moving business. All right. He felt he could, run that on a part-time basis. You had all the trucks, you had all the people, all that good stuff. Great. If you think that's something you want to go for, let's get some basic diligence information. And of course, the diligence blew up almost immediately. But it gave him an idea, though. You know what? That would be an interesting sector for me. So anyway.
No, I love it. Taking your knowledge and know-how and bringing it to a different industry to exploit where the business has weakness to see where you can grow it. It's a classic move. I love that. Jeff, we want to thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and find your course?
Sure. Email address is jeff.villwock. Excuse me, it's just Jeff at jeffvillwock.com. So you've got the spelling on the screen there. You can also go to acquisitionsprofessor.com. And there's a video there when you get there that will kind of lead you through a discussion about what we do. And if you're interested, at the end, you can schedule an appointment to talk with me, or LinkedIn. I'm doing a lot of stuff right now on LinkedIn. And there's a place in my profile to schedule an appointment. So all those work.
Jeff, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
I do appreciate the opportunity.
One question before I let you run. If you had to buy a business tomorrow, what industry is it in?
Ooh. Probably logistics.
Interesting.
The amount of stuff that you and I buy online is just going through the roof. The biggest problem we had at Rittenhouse, external logistics. We had returns, we had and there's so many pieces to that puzzle that it could be everything as simple as a FedEx freight driver. I mean, there's tons of FedEx freight delivery businesses out there for sale. Be very, very careful. But if you buy them right, that's probably a good business.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much. Everybody, that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you in the next.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.